Hey everyone, welcome back to the AI4Lib channel. I'm Sukhdev Singh, and today we are digging into something I've been thinking about a lot lately. What happens to academic libraries when generative AI becomes part of everyday research life? We are calling this talk, The Architecture of Trust, Reimagining Academic Libraries in the GenAI Era, and it's built on real conversations happening inside the AI4Lib community as of August 2026. This isn't a talk about whether AI belongs in research, that ship has sailed. It's about what gets built around AI so that research stays honest, traceable, and trustworthy. If you are a librarian, a researcher, or someone training the next generation of either, this one's for you. Let's get into it. So here's the core tension we need to sit with. AI can process information, but it cannot exercise judgment. On one side, AI is genuinely useful. It can survey literature, draft reviews, and generate hypotheses at a speed no human can match. But on the other side, actually reading, sitting with a source, wrestling with it, is what builds understanding of its assumptions, its limitations, and its contradictions. That's a different kind of work entirely, and it's not something you can outsource to a model. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question sitting at the bottom of this slide. What happens to research when humans slowly stop doing the thinking themselves? Responsibility for what gets published cannot be handed off to a machine. That accountability stays with us. And that's exactly the problem we'll unpack next. Let's talk about something I call the circular crisis, and honestly, it keeps me up at night a little. Picture this loop. AI summarized the literature, AI conducts research based on that summary, AI writes papers from that research, and then, here's the kicker, AI reads those very papers to inform the next generation of output. Round and round it goes. Without anything breaking that circle, we risk a slow drift where errors and biases compound instead of getting corrected, generation after generation. That red wedge you see cutting into the loop, that's the human verification layer. It's not optional decoration, it's structural. Someone has to step into that circle and check what's actually true before it feeds back into the system. So who's positioned to do that checking? That's where librarians come in, and we'll build on that next. Here's a trap I see novice researchers fall into constantly, the Fluency Trap. Picture a simple grid. One axis runs from clunky to fluent, the other from inaccurate to accurate. The danger zone isn't the clunky inaccurate stuff, that's obvious, anyone can spot bad writing. The real danger sits in that red box up top, fluent and inaccurate. Polished, confident, well-structured, and wrong. Novice researchers often lack the domain expertise to tell fluent wrong from fluent right, especially when citations, statistics, and quotations are invented in a highly polished register. It reads like it was written by an expert, even when it wasn't checked by one. And that's the exact moment the librarian needs to step in, not to gatekeep the tool, but to teach the discernment that catches confident nonsense before it becomes a citation. Let's go back further to see why this discernment has always been our job. Here's something that might surprise you. The oldest AI design specification wasn't written by an engineer. It was written in 1931 by S.R. Ranganathan in his 5 Laws of Library Science. Look at the parallel on this table. Books are for use becomes AI systems are for use, not black boxes. Every reader his book becomes matched retrieval for every researcher. Every book its reader becomes proactive information routing. Save the time of the reader becomes reducing friction between need and answer. And the library is a growing organism that's continuous learning algorithms, decades before anyone coined the term. Engineers today are spending years building systems that Ranganathan specified in a single paragraph, almost a century ago. That's not a coincidence, it's a sign of just how deep the LIS foundations run, which is what we'll unpack next. So let's push that idea further. LIS professionals hold the theoretical keys to modern AI reasoning. On the left, you've got Ranganathan's colon classification, breaking subjects into multifaceted dimensions: personality, matter, energy, space, and time. On the right, you've got knowledge graph construction, the underlying architecture that makes AI reasoning possible through multifaceted semantic relationships. Look closely and you'll see the lines connecting these two systems aren't a stretch. They're describing the same intellectual move, breaking a subject down into structured, related facets so machines, or catalogers, can reason about it. So let's be clear, LIS is not a declining field. It's the foundational logic underneath every intelligent information system being built right now. Now let's look at what researchers themselves are actually saying they want from AI. Let's ground this in some real numbers. 99% of researchers surveyed are aware of generative AI tools, and 76% are using the free version, so this isn't a niche behavior anymore, it's mainstream. Their top users? Idea generation at 16%, knowledge queries at 15%, and writing assistance at 13%. But here's the part that matters most. Their top concern is a lack of institutional guidelines, rated 4.17 out of 5. And when asked directly, scholars strongly rejected the idea of replacing human supervisory input with ChatGPT, with a large effect size of 0.97. Read that carefully. Researchers want an assistant, not a replacement for their own oversight. They're asking for guardrails, not restrictions. So the question becomes, what does information literacy need to look like to meet that demand? Information literacy can't stay a single skill anymore, it has to evolve into a multi-layered search ecology, and I break it into 4 layers. Temporal, understanding the evolution from classification and Boolean logic all the way to web search and generative AI. Methodological, distinguishing convenience-oriented search, quick and easy, from accountable, reproducible search, where you can show your work. Contextual, recognizing that search logic differs by discipline, a medical systematic review demands something very different from exploratory work in the social sciences. And cognitive, reframing AI prompting itself as the new reference interview, that classic librarian skill of negotiating context and clarifying what someone actually needs. Put these 4 together and you get a much richer picture of what literacy means today. Now let's translate that into something practical you can actually teach. Here's a framework you can actually put into practice with your researchers and students. Step 1. Explore with GenAI. Let it help you get oriented and generate initial ideas. Step 2. Discover with scholarly search. Move into the databases and indexes built for accountability. Step 3. Verify with authoritative sources. Cross-check what you've found against sources you trust. Step 4. Search systematically when accountability matters. For anything going into a publication, slow down and be rigorous. And step 5. Document the search for reproducibility, so someone else could retrace your steps. Notice the red bar running underneath every single step. Use librarian judgment throughout. That's not a footnote, it's the foundation the whole staircase stands on. Now, before we go further, we need to talk about a legal dimension that's rapidly evolving: copyright. The copyright conversation around AI used to focus almost entirely on training data. Now it's shifting to cover the entire data lifecycle, and I think of it in 3 stages. Acquisition: where did the data actually come from, and were shadow libraries involved? That's a question of lawful access and provenance. Training: is the copying and storage used for LLM training genuinely protected as fair use? That's a question of process. And output, does the system reproduce protected expression in what it generates for users? That's a question of the product itself. The takeaway here is simple but important: data provenance matters just as much as data usage. You can't evaluate the output fairly without understanding where the input came from. And that's a question institutions are only just beginning to grapple with, which brings us to our next slide. Here's something I'll say plainly: institutions are quietly sitting on a massive governance gap. Look at this checklist: clear usage policies for generative AI, academic integrity standards written specifically for AI-assisted work, and data handling rules for uploading proprietary research into public tools. Most institutions I talk to have gaps in all three boxes, not just one. And here's why this matters for us specifically: librarians have historically written and enforced information use policies. Copyright compliance, fair use guidance, data handling, this has always been our territory. So closing this institutional gap isn't a stretch for the profession, it's a natural extension of the mandate we already hold. If your institution doesn't have these policies yet, that's not someone else's job to write, that's an opening for the library to lead. Let's talk about why the stakes here go even deeper than policy. Reliable AI depends entirely on stable knowledge infrastructure, and that chain breaking apart on screen is exactly the risk we are facing. The threat is real: disappearing web content, aging datasets, link rot, and model drift are quietly eroding the ground AI systems stand on. The reality is blunt: AI systems cannot reliably synthesize knowledge that has changed without a trace or lost its provenance along the way. So what's the solution? Digital preservation, stable URLs, institutional repositories, careful versioning, and rigorous metadata. This used to sound like a niche archival concern. Today, it's an acute AI security concern. Libraries are the infrastructure that makes reliable AI possible in the first place, even if most AI conversations never mention us. So let's name what this actually means for our professional identity going forward. This is the shift I think matters most. The LIS role is transitioning from guarding access to designing trust. The old model, the gatekeeper, meant guarding walled gardens of information and focusing heavily on search syntax and database navigation. Useful, but narrow. The new model, the trust architect, means designing the verification layer that sits between raw AI output and legitimate academic use. It means teaching provenance, source validity, and ethical synthesis, rather than simply handing someone a key to a database. That red underline under Trust Architect isn't decorative, it's marking where the profession is heading, whether we choose it deliberately or get pulled into it reactively. I'd rather we choose it. So let's bring this down to two concrete audiences and what each of them actually needs from us. Here's a line worth remembering: discovery is cheap, but ethical synthesis is where the real work lives. This scale splits the challenge into two audiences. For researchers, the work is ethical synthesis, learning how to leverage AI's efficiencies without sacrificing independent judgment or academic integrity. For librarians, the work is discovery architecture, building information systems and search ecologies that never lose the reader's trust. These insights come directly out of a workshop I ran at PAU Ludhiana, and what struck me was this: these are two different audiences, using different language, but fighting for the exact same goal. When we frame it that way, collaboration stops being optional and starts being obvious. Let's close with where I think this all leaves us. So let's land the plane. The future of academia is not human versus AI, it is human with AI. Every transformative technology, from the calculator to the search engine, has been accused at some point of weakening the mind. That accusation is old, and it's usually wrong in the way people expect. Humanizing AI is a design choice, one that engineers and institutions make. But the choice to exercise curiosity, skepticism, and ethical judgment? That remains entirely ours. As I like to put it, intellect is still, and will remain, a human affair. Thank you so much for watching this breakdown from the AI4Lib community. If this resonated with you, drop a comment with your own experience navigating AI in your library or research work, and consider joining our AI4Lib WhatsApp community. The link is below. Until next time, keep building trust into every system you touch.